Hello students, welcome to the lecture on business communication and its scope for management, and after this lecture we will be able to learn the following objectives. Define the communication, explain the objectives, purpose of communication, define the scope of communication, explain the importance and functions of communication, and discuss the effectiveness of organizational communication. Let us start with communication. Communication is a process of interaction with people and environment. Two or more individuals interact and influence the ideas, beliefs, and attitudes of each other. Nature of communication. The following are the key elements of communication. Communication is a two-way process. It involves a sender and a receiver. There has to be a message. The message can be information, a directive, an inquiry, a feeling, an opinion, an idea, or any other. Commonness of understanding. Communication can occur only when there is commonness of understanding between the sender and the receiver. Modifying the behavior of other individuals. The information transmitted to the receiver evokes a response in the form of some change in his behavior. Method of giving information. Information can be given through words or through other means like signs, gestures, expressions, etc. Communication, objectives and purposes. Various objectives of communication are information. One of the most important objectives of communication is passing or receiving information about a particular fact or circumstance. Advise. Advise is an important objective of communication as it involves personal opinions and is likely to be subjective. Order. Order is an authoritative communication. The downward flow of information is dominated by orders. Suggestion. Suggestion enjoys great advantage over other means of communication like advice or order. Suggestion is supposed to be very mild and subtle form of communication. Persuasion. In the office or the factory, the lazy, the incompetent and the disgruntled workers have to be persuaded to do their work. Education. Education is a very conscious process of communication. Warning. Warning is a forceful means of communication as it demands immediate action. Raising morale. Morale boosting is only possible through communication. High morale results in better performance. Motivation. Motivation energizes and activates a person and channelizes his behavior towards the attainment of desired goals. Purpose of communication. Some purposes of communication are: for instruction. The instructive function unvarying and importantly deals with the commanding nature. It is more or less of directive nature. For integration. It is consolidated function under which integration of activities is endeavored. It helps in the unification of different management functions. For information. Information can flow vertically, horizontally and diagonally across the organization. Becoming informed or inform others is the main purpose of communication. For evaluation. Evaluating one's own inputs or others' inputs or some ideological scheme demands an adequate and effective communication process. For direction. Communication is necessary to issue directions by the top management or manager to the lower level. Employee can perform better when he is directed by his senior. For teaching. A complete communication process is required to teach and educate workers about personal safety on the jobs. For influencing. The individual having potential to influence others can easily persuade others. It implies the provision of feedback which tells the effect of communication. For image building. Goodwill and confidence are necessarily created among the public Through an effective external communication system, an enterprise has to inform the society about its goals, activities, progress, and social responsibility. For employees' orientation, communication helps to make people acquainted with the co-employees, superior, and with the policies, objectives, rules, and regulations of the organization. Importance and functions of communication. Importance of communication in business. Communication is a crucial, decisive factor in business relations. It is very important to say the right things at the right time and at the right place when dealing with partners, customers, stakeholders, media, and sometimes even competitors. Any miscommunication or ambiguity can ruin our hard work. Importance of communication in the workplace. Communication in the workplace involves interpersonal communication between colleagues, superior and subordinate, and vice versa, and workplace communication skills come handy in such situations. A clear understanding of the purpose of such communication, especially if it is of a vertical nature, along with the expectations of the sender and receiver, are extremely important for the smooth running of an organization. Importance of communication in leadership. Communication is the best equipment a leader can employ to achieve this goal. Even ideals resting upon strong principles can fall flat and fail to motivate due to lack of effective communication skills. Importance of communication in relationships. Lack of communication in relationships results in frustrations, misunderstandings, unrealistic expectations, guilt, and can create personal differences. Relationship communication problems can only be solved through active and effective communication. Factors responsible for growth. Importance of communication are growth in the size and multiple locations of organizations. Most of the organization is growing larger and larger in size. Sending directions across and getting feedback is possible only when communication lines are kept working effectively. Growth of trade unions. Over the last so many decades, trade unions have been growing strong. Effective communication will create a relationship between the management and the workers. Growing importance of human relations. Workers have their own hopes and aspirations. Management has to recognize them and should work with the spirit of integration so that human relations may be maintained. This may only be achieved through effective communication. Public relations. Every organization has a social responsibility towards customers, government, suppliers, and the public at large. Communication is the only way an organization can project a positive image of itself. Technological advancement. Technological advancements deeply affect not only the methods of work but also the compositions of group. In such a situation, proper communication between superiors and subordinates becomes very necessary. Effective organizational communication. Let us now watch a short video for understanding the communication process.
Exactly what we want to say. We don't even know ourselves exactly how the message should go, so how are we going to get it to other people? So step number one is formulating the message in your brain, but sometimes things go wrong there. The next step is to encode that message in something that can be transmitted to somebody else. Now, an example of encoding might be words that you write down, it might be words that you speak, it might be a picture that you draw, it might be music, it could be graffiti, it could be facial expressions, it could be any number of ways of encoding that message. But things go wrong there because we've got this message, but we don't always get it encoded right. Now the third step is to send it to somebody, and that has to be transmitted to them in a way that they can receive it. And so we might use email, we might use voice messages, we might once again transmit via voice tones or facial expressions or body language, any number of ways we're going to transmit. But things can go wrong during the transmission. Then the fourth step is for them to decode it. And so they get this message, or what is left of the message by the time they get it, and they have to decide what it means. They have to take these words and decode them into something that they can interpret and understand. So the last step is for them to understand. Now think about this. We've got 5 steps. In any step, something can go wrong, where it doesn't come through to the next step the way it started at the beginning of the step. If you've ever been in a room where you passed a message around a circle, by the time it gets to the 5th person, it barely resembles what you started with. Well, a lot of times our personal communication be just like that. So here's what we have to do. We have to use this last step, which I call the feedback loop, where we check our understanding of the message that was received. Now, a lot of times this is done through paraphrasing or empathetic listening, and we don't have time to teach that in this short video, but it's the way that we're going to verify that we understood what somebody else meant. And that closes the loop and makes sure that any errors that crept into the process are recognized and dealt with. On the other side of that coin, if you're the person who's doing the sending, the transmitting, and you're not sure that the other person received it properly, check with them. A lot of times with email, we skip this step. We just send it out and think that they got it the way we intended it, and we know from experience that it doesn't always work that way. So let's make sure we always complete the communication process with the feedback loop. So there you have it, the 6 steps of communication and the communication process, what happens, why things go wrong, and what to do about it.
There are various features and guidelines that make communication effective. The video that we will watch next will help us learn them.
They start talking about a topic or situation that the other person is not yet aware of. It's important to start your discussion on a point that people can relate to, preferably from the very beginning, unless you're sure that they already know the foundation of the topic of discussion. Tip number 2, be crystal clear in imparting your message. When you say, he's mad, do you mean he's angry, or do you mean he's crazy? Whenever you're going to say or write something that is vague or may lead to miscommunication, it's highly recommended that you change the words in a way that imparts a clear message. Tip number 3, give them a summary or an overall glimpse of the big picture. This is vital when talking about something that takes a little or a lot more time to comprehend. This way they can better relate the discussion to the big picture and absorb what you're saying. Tip number 4, stay humble. Never brag or be arrogant, because it's a big turn-off. The other party may think, in his own mind, that he's better than you and you'll just bruise his ego. You may even feign not to know things that you may already be aware of if it would give you an edge in communicating with him. Give him the impression that you're an ally and not in competition with him. Tip number 5, pay attention to what's being said instead of thinking what you'll say next. This may be a little difficult for you to do initially. That's why it's critical to practice and enhance your communication skills until it becomes a part of you. When listening, don't interrupt while they're talking. Wait a second or two before you speak. Avoid changing subjects, because this indicates your disinterest. Tip number 6, choose the right time. When they're not in the mood or when they're pressed with time, your words may just fall in deaf ears because they will not give you attention. Ask first if you can have a few minutes of their time. If they say it's not a good time, ask for a time that fits their schedule. Tip number 7, never disrespect anyone. Watch out for the body signals that you're giving away. You might be pouting your lips, breathing heavily, shaking your head, or rolling your eyes without you being aware that you're offending others. Watch your language too. If saying whatever, oh bother, or yeah right is part of your lingo, practice taking them out of your vocabulary. Practice and apply these 7 communication tips, and you'll be able to influence people faster than anyone else.
Summary. Now in the end, let us summarize what we have learned in this lecture. Communication can be defined as a process by which 2 or more people exchange ideas, facts, feelings, or impressions in ways that each gains a common understanding of the message. One of the most important objectives of communication is passing or receiving information about a particular fact or circumstance. The communicator transmits with necessary directives and guidance to the next level so as to enable them to accomplish his particular tasks. In an organization, there is consistent movement of information legal and otherwise. Business communication has a wide scope covering everything within branding, marketing, advertising, customer relations, research, reputation management, and even employee engagement. External business communication involves the establishment of company branding and marketing ideas and strategies. Communication is a crucial, decisive factor in business relations. It is very important to say the right things at the right time and at the right place when dealing with partners, customers, stakeholders, media, and sometimes even competitors.